Hey everyone, welcome to my kitchen. I'm Bethany, and today's recipe I'm going to be showing you how to make chicken cacciatore, which is a rustic Italian stew made of braised chicken, vegetables, and tomatoes. It is light but yet really comforting. It's so delicious. My family loves this recipe, so let's get right into it. So the first step in our chicken cacciatore is getting the chicken ready. We're gonna season 6 chicken thighs that are boneless and skinless with salt and pepper on both sides. I like to use the boneless and skinless because I don't really need the skin on the chicken in this dish. It's gonna get really tender, and if that's the case, then I don't really use the chicken skin unless I want it to get crispy. So we're gonna generously season these on both sides. Then in a brazier cast iron pan, I have that heated over medium heat right now. I wanna use a pan that is oven safe, but also something that I can cook everything on top with a stove, and then we can just cover it and put it in the oven. So you can use whatever you like, but I'm gonna be using a cast iron skillet brazier. And we have this heated up already. We wanna have that heated before we add our olive oil for the chicken. That way, it hopefully doesn't stick. But we'll oil that with about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. So we're gonna brown the chicken thighs for about 3 minutes on each side, just for them to get browned, not fully cooked. All right, so after the chicken's browned, we're gonna take a clean plate and transfer those chicken thighs to the plate. So in the same pan that we browned our chicken in, we're actually gonna cook our vegetables without wiping it out. But in my pan right now, there's a lot of chicken bits on the bottom, and before I add the vegetables, I kind of want to bring those off of the surface. So just a little extra step you can do that I like to do if that's the case is just splash the pan with a little bit of chicken stock or even water just to deglaze the bottom of the pan, and we're going to use just a wooden spoon to get some of those bits up off of the bottom. So first, a chicken cacciatore is filled with lots of vegetables, which is why I love it. And we're gonna be using a typical sofrito. So we have a large yellow onion. Mine's really large, so I'm gonna use about 2/3 of it. And chicken cacciatore actually just means hunter style, which means that it's a kind of throw together rustic type dish. So you can do big cuts or little cuts. I like little cuts, so it's not really hunter style, but that's kind of the idea of the dish, is it's very rustic. You can just roughly chop everything in and throw it in. But we're going to do a diced onion. We'll put that in our pan. And we're doing a sofrito, so we're gonna also add a carrot and a stalk of celery, so just one of each. And chicken cacciatore always reminds me of Sunday dinners with my family. My mom would often make chicken cacciatore when the fall came and the winter came. It's a really nice comforting dish, but it's also really easy. I love making this dish because you can put it in the oven, let it roast, and when your company comes, dinner's ready. So that's a really nice thing about it. Mix those together in that pan. And we're also gonna add 1 red bell pepper. This is nice for sweetness. Like I said, this dish is full of vegetables. So we're gonna do a 1/4 teaspoon of salt with the vegetables. And we'll let these cook for about 3 to 4 minutes, just until they're soft. And we have that oil already in the bottom of the pan, but you can totally add more if you feel like it needs it. So while the sofrito and the vegetables are cooking, we're gonna chop up about 4 ounces of white button mushrooms. If you don't like mushrooms, don't worry, you can't tell that they're in this dish. I like to chop them really small, which is kind of against the hunter style, but I'm not a massive mushroom fan, but my mom always put it in her chicken cacciatore, so I like them chopped really small, and it blends in really nice with the chicken. It kind of turns into like a chicken ragu, and you hardly notice that it's there. But it's great for adding a nice flavor to the whole dish. All right, so our vegetables are getting soft, but they're still gonna cook more with the mushrooms. Now we're gonna add the diced mushrooms. Then we'll cook this for an additional 2 to 3 minutes, just for the mushrooms to soften, and the vegetables will continue to soften as well. And we can also add just a little pinch of salt for those mushrooms. You never want to, as I've mentioned in other videos, make the whole dish and then season it with salt at the end. That is not building flavor. We want to do that in every step that we make with seasoning with salt. So while our vegetables are finishing cooking, we're gonna add 5 minced garlic cloves. And we'll let this cook for 30 to 60 seconds as the vegetables are finishing. Now I do want to say there's a little bit more moisture in the pan than what is typical for me. This burner is on its way out. This is probably the last time you'll be seeing this burner. It has not been serving me well in these videos. But when I'm using this on my gas range, this is not the case. So just wanted to say that every heat source is different. So just kind of keeping that in mind. But since I deglazed the pan with some broth, it hasn't really fully come out, but that's fine. We just want to soften these. So now we're going to add 2 tablespoons to our vegetables of tomato paste. And we're gonna cook that with the vegetables for about 2 minutes. This is gonna really help develop a little bit more flavor in the chicken cacciatore. And while that's cooking, we're gonna add some herbs. So we have about 2 teaspoons of fresh rosemary and 2 teaspoons of fresh sage. If you want to use dried rosemary and dried sage, you can just do 1 teaspoon. It would be less than fresh herbs. And then we'll add that with the tomato paste. Get those flavors coming out of the herbs a little bit more. Then we're going to add 1/8 of a teaspoon, which is like a healthy pinch of red pepper flakes. If you want a little bit more heat, which it wouldn't even be spicy, you could do a 1/4 teaspoon. Then we're going to add a 1/4 cup of white wine to deglaze the pan. In this step, I'm using a Pinot Grigio. You can use Sauvignon Blanc. Anything dry would be great, and just white wine, not red. That smells so good. Once that wine goes in, the whole dish just transforms. Now, I do want to say that I did not originally have wine in this recipe. My mom never used wine in her chicken cacciatore, but I do find that just adding it in this step, it's kind of like a healthy splash, will really give this dish so much more flavor. But I do want to say that if you don't want to use alcohol, just leave it out. Totally fine. And if you need to deglaze your pan at this point, after the tomato paste, just do a splash of stock or even just a little bit of water. And we're gonna cook the wine really until it absorbs, which is in no time at all because it was just a generous splash. And then we have some more fresh herbs. We have some fresh basil from my garden. It is on its way out. I'm very sad about that, but we're gonna use the last of it before the first frost comes. We're gonna do a generous amount, so about 2 to 3 tablespoons of fresh basil. Now, when you want to use dried herbs, I have no problem with you using the dried rosemary and dried sage, but when it comes to basil, I do recommend using fresh. I don't really like dried basil or dried parsley, and they're such cheap herbs, so I feel like you could find them at the store year round. At least I do, and I always buy the plants of it. So we're gonna add our fresh basil. Then we're going to do 3/4 of a teaspoon of garlic powder And I've done this in other recipes. We're not making this garlicky. We're developing flavor. Just by doing garlic in a fresh form and in a dried form, it just really layers more flavor than just using fresh or just using dried. And now we're gonna add one 28-ounce can of plum tomatoes, and I hand crushed those. I'm not a huge fan of pre-crushed tomatoes. I don't know why. They have the weirdest texture to me, so I prefer hand crushing them myself. And we're gonna do all the juices in there. We really want those because we're not adding any more liquid to this recipe. I actually had chicken stock in the recipe a while ago, and I felt like it was too much liquid, so I removed it. And we're just doing this, and we'll have the lid covering it so nothing can evaporate. We'll just stir that in. This really turns into such a beautiful sauce with the chicken. Then for our final seasoning of salt, we're gonna do a half a teaspoon. Then we have our brown chicken from earlier. We're going to zhuzh that into the sauce and the vegetables. Just make sure that it's mostly covered. And then the juices from the chicken, I'm just gonna pour in there as well. Guys, we forgot the black pepper. We have to have a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. You know, I gotta go with the flow of things sometimes. I knew I forgot something. Now we're gonna cover this with the lid, and we're gonna bake the chicken cacciatore in the oven at 350 degrees for 50 minutes covered, and then another 20 minutes uncovered. And that way, if there's too much liquid in the pan, it can absorb a little bit. But if you feel like it's absorbing too much, you can just keep it covered the whole time. So it'll cook for 1 hour and 10 minutes in total. And then at the end, the chicken will be falling apart, or it should be, and it'll just be rich and delicious. I'm excited to taste it. So our chicken cacciatore is done. It's been cooling for a few minutes since braising in the oven, and I typically like to serve this over pasta because it's kind of like a chicken ragu in a way. So that's the way that we like to serve it. We really always serve it with pasta, but I've had a lot of viewers let me know that they've served this with potatoes too, if you don't want to do pasta, or just with bread, and you can just serve it on its own. But I always like to serve this with a dusting of Parmigiano Reggiano on top. Always adds to the dish, but it smells delicious, looks divine. It's delicious. The fact that this is a chicken dish and it has so much flavor and it doesn't taste like chicken, that's why I love this dish, because I feel like chicken dishes can just not be good sometimes. The chicken thighs are literally falling apart. That's how tender they get. If you have a bone-in chicken thigh, it should fall off the bone. The vegetables have so much flavor, the sauce has so much flavor. And one thing I wanted to point out, I should have pointed out this in the beginning of my video, but I forgot. But there's different types of chicken cacciatores. So if you're wondering why this doesn't have olives or capers or anchovy, that's typically a southern Italian chicken cacciatore. Mine is based more on a northern Italian, which is the celery, carrot, bell pepper, mushrooms. The mushrooms aren't always in it. But that is one thing about chicken cacciatore, is it is a little bit different based on what region it's from and who makes it, because I don't particularly like olives in a baked dish, but I love olives in like a fresh salad or something like that, but not really in a chicken cacciatore. But yeah, this is absolutely delicious and one of my favorite dishes to make, especially if I'm hosting. Like I said earlier, it is a dish that you can make, throw in the oven. You don't have a lot of cleanup, and once your guests come, You just take it out of the oven, serve it with some pasta, salad, some bread, and it's a great Sunday dinner. And I love Sunday dinners with my family. So I hope you guys get to try this and you can let me know what you think of it. And also, if you make chicken cacciatore another way, feel free to let me know your favorite ingredients that you like to include in that in the comments. But thanks so much for joining me today, and I hope you guys enjoy this. And as always, I'll catch you in the next recipe, and I'll see you in the comments.